Hello, twisted humans.
Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alecia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is
Twisted and Uncorked. Okay, so welcome to another episode of Twisted and Uncorked, episode 21.
Woo!
It is a murderless case today.
Oh,
And I did not go, I went spooky. I did not go as dark as
Not
my
scary.
last murderless case.
Yeah.
I went spooky, but not like kidnapped and held captive for 7 years scary. So I lightened it up this time as promised.
Nice. I'm excited.
Yeah, but before I get into that, do you have a weird fact for me?
I do.
Sorry to interrupt you from eating your Kit Kat bar.
I haven't started yet. It's fine. I'm waiting.
She's been like carefully unwrapping this Kit Kat bar the entire time we've been on Zoom.
I gotta have it ready. Okay. Have you heard of a place called Colma, California?
No. What is it?
So, Colma, California, their slogan is "It's great to be alive in Colma." And in 2010, they had more dead residents than living.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
How can that even be considered a town?
So
I
there
don't
was
think your town
over
is thriving.
there's over 2 million dead residents and only about 1,500, as of 2010, 1,792 live residents. But it's because it's right outside of LA, and in LA, a long time ago, not LA, San Francisco, they banned having cemeteries. So San Francisco doesn't have any cemeteries except for the ones that were there.
So were they piling up their dead in this town?
Yeah.
What?
So they made this
God.
town called Colma that is just supposed to be. Originally it was just where they were going to store dead bodies. They moved a bunch of them from San Francisco to Colma, and now like that's just where if you die in San Francisco, you're buried in Colma. Like it's just a bunch of dead people.
I think we need to add a spooky tour.
Like seance trip.
Yes. Yeah, to Colma as a Patreon goal. I'm going to add it. That is insane.
It's so creepy.
We need to go to Colma and learn more about this dead person town.
It's so cool. Like imagine what those 1,700 living people are like. You know,
like
probably
they're either
us.
the weirdest people or the best people. Yeah,
or
it's
both.
just full of. Yeah, well, we're weird and the best, so yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
We might find our people, guys. We might find more twisted humans.
If you live in Colma, please.
We might be killed. We're not sure. Only time will tell once we get to that Patreon goal. Well, on that note, my fun fact is about animals again this week because I love animals. They're better than reindeer. And so fun fact about koalas, they have fingerprints that are so similar to human fingerprints that there has been times in history where they have screwed up crime scenes walking through them, leaving fingerprints that investigators believe to be a human's, but it actually is a koala's.
Oh my
goodness. And if you compare them under a microscope, it's so hard to tell the difference.
That's adorable, and I'm pretty sure I saw that somewhere before and thought that it was made up. So, like, I'm really happy to know that that's real.
It's not made up. I was like, what? I was looking at pictures of it. So loopy, whirling ridges that humans have on their own fingerprints are similar to the finger pads on koalas. And another fact about koalas is they make the most horrifying noise.
Really?
Like, have you ever heard a koala noise?
Apparently not.
I've ruined koalas for several people because of this noise, and it's a noise that they more make during like mating season, but it is really scary. Oh yeah. Oh no, I'm gonna play it for you. Okay, it is really scary. It's also just like funny too. And so it's a little bit related to today's case. Not really at all. Like my case does not involve koalas. But the noise that they make made me think of part of my case that I read. But we'll get there. Can you hear that?
All of that is the koala?
Yeah. They sound like Wookiees or something. Like
they sound like purring aliens.
Predators. Yeah.
Like alien versus predator noises.
Yeah.
What
right? It's deeply unsettling. Can you imagine walking through the woods and just hearing that shit?
Oh my god. I would run so fast.
So I know so many people that think koalas are just the cutest thing ever. And then I was like, did you know that they make the scariest noises? And they're like, no. And I've ruined koalas for people.
Yeah, that's
And
terrifying.
now all of our listeners love koalas. They are really cute and unique and, eat up all the eucalyptus in the world. But that's fine.
I will love from afar. I am still running if I hear that.
On that note, we will have some wine to, chase down that horrifying noise. I want to try it. I haven't tried it yet.
So what is this wine?
It is 14 Hands Pinot Grigio. It's a little drier than I typically like for Pinot Grigios. I think it's just like that heavy citrus back notes that it has, but it's not bad. It's refreshing considering it's really hot right now. So yeah, I'm going to take it. So Sierra picked out this wine for us because she has limited selection where she is. And it just makes it easier if she can pick it. And then we get to try the same wines together.
Are there any wine companies that can mail me wine that want to sponsor us? Because that'd be super fucking great. Because Tennessee sucks for wine, at least in my city.
First Leaf, Wink Wine.
Where you at?
I had another wine picked out for today, but I'm going to save it for when Sierra comes to Canada to visit me, and we can record an episode together instead. Yay! So this is another Washington wine. I know we go back and forth between Washington and California. This one offers aromas of fresh melon and green apple, followed by flavors of pear and honeysuckle. So not citrusy at all, which is what I'm tasting, but, it's not bad. What do you think?
I don't like whites very much. This one is not... It kind of reminds me of the Chardonnay. Like, it feels kind of heavy.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's weird. I'm dealing, but it's weird.
You're dealing.
I brought my Roscato as backup from last week because
somehow I still have
some. Yeah.
If you have any wine suggestions or wines that you think Sierra would really like, challenge accepted. And on that note,
for your case.
Well, so I went a unique route for our cases today. I did 2 shallow dives. Rather than one big case, and they are very creepy and involve noises in the woods.
Oh, all right. I'm excited. I forgot you were doing Murderless this week, so
maybe not koala noises.
I didn't know what to expect.
On that note, we will dive in. So the first one is longer than the second one. The second one is like a very short first-hand experience.
Okay.
So in November of 1989, 22-year-old Eloise Lindsay was a college graduate of Agnes Scott College, and she wasn't too sure what she wanted to do with her next steps. She was proud of herself for earning her degree, but felt like she was in limbo on her next move, and she felt like she needed to get away from it all. clear her head a little bit, and let loose. She told her parents that she was going to plan a hiking trip for what she estimated to be anywhere between 7 and 9 days long. Her parents had no issue with this, considering that hiking and backpacking were Eloise's favorite pastimes, and she was a very experienced hiker at 22.
It sounds like my dream. I would totally do this. Also,
right? Maybe not after this story.
Oh, God. Also, this wine is really good with the Kit Kat. So, there's that. Pairs well with chocolate. Just saying.
Good to know. Sierra's dream, Eloise is a very experienced hiker at 22 and plans a 33.3 kilometer hike along the Appalachian Trail in rugged South Carolina.
So great.
She planned to go, right? Well, yeah. She planned to go about halfway and meet up with a friend of hers that was going to be doing another trail, and then they would finish off the hike together. And this would be about 7 days in. So they had everything planned, and on November 4th, she signed the Wilderness Book, the beginning of the Foothills Trail in Table Rock State Park, and set out on her hike. And keep in mind, this is in 1989. I don't know if there's still a Wilderness Book there to sign, but that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
The first few days were relaxing as she walked through the trails with her little backpack and gear. She enjoyed the sun coming through the trees, the sounds of nature, and with all the fresh air, she could finally feel her mind starting to clear a little bit and herself starting to relax after a tough semester. On the third day, she could not shake this feeling of intense dread, though. She felt like there was something really wrong and could not pinpoint it. She started to check in with herself, think about everything that she had brought with her, why she could maybe be feeling like this, things going on in her life, etc., but nothing stood out. She walked as far as she could that day before setting up camp for the night. That intense feeling would not go away, though. She couldn't relax and she couldn't sleep. She thought that maybe she was just in a stretch of woods where perhaps something awful had happened and she was picking up some sort of energy. She wasn't sure. She made the decision early in the morning to get out of there. That bad feeling still continued. While packing up while the sun was rising, Eloise scanned the tree line while she packed up her little camp and saw a man standing about 40 feet away along the trees.
Uh-oh.
It was not totally unheard of, as they were near a public trail, but typically in this setting, people make themselves known amongst each other on the trails and in the woods, and this man did the complete opposite.
Yeah, he sounds like a creeper. Why are you watching?
Yeah,
Keep walking.
Right, sir? She went back to packing and did a double take in the direction that the man had been standing in, but he was no longer there. She felt this intense dread wash over her again. She started packing her belongings more quickly, feeling slightly panicked now. She thought about calling out to him, but she was all alone in the woods, and it was weird that he was not keeping himself seen. She got this horrible feeling that she was being watched and felt very vulnerable. She took off quickly with her belongings down the trail and felt as though she was being followed. That sense of dread continued, and she started to run. She thought maybe this feeling of dread was her body sending her warning signals that she was in danger of some sort. Why she had felt it the day before and why she wasn't able to sleep last night. Was this her body's way of trying to protect her? While she was running down the trail, she couldn't shake the feeling that somebody was right behind her and kept looking and turning back as she ran. Eloise felt that she had two options at this point. She could continue down the trail and on her original trip until nightfall, where she may or may not reach other hikers, or she could cut through the brush down the ravine to where she thought that there was where she thought she had seen on the map a road running parallel to her trail. It was about a few miles away from what she could remember. After continuing on and hearing the audible noises behind her, they started to get more clear and more human-like, almost like a man's grunt, and that was all she needed to make up her mind. She started down off the trail and down the ravine towards the direction that she thought the road would be in.
Why is a man grunting in the woods?
I don't know, but this
like
is so gross. I know.
Yeah.
So she feels like she's being followed, and now she starts to hear these grunts. No, I'm not okay with it. Yeah, and he's just off in the distance watching her, like, gross. Sir. So, she ran for miles and miles down the ravine. She heard sticks breaking and noises in the brush behind her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that somebody was following her. She continued to run, but never found a road. She was sure that there was one there, and now she felt like she was completely lost. She was all alone, and now she was being stalked by something or someone just a few feet back.
Oh my goodness.
I don't like it.
I know, this poor girl.
Right? And she's an experienced hiker. Like, she's been alone in the woods before.
Yeah, just not with a creeper.
Right? It was starting to get dark, and she had no choice but to spend the night where she was. She quickly set up camp, ran into her tent, zipped it up, and listened close. All night long, she heard the sounds of somebody walking around her campsite, heavy footsteps, and those low, audible grunts. They never got right up close to her tent, but they kind of were like walking around the perimeter of where she had set up. Of course, she got zero sleep that night. Got up the minute the sun was starting to rise again and continued down in the direction that she thought would lead her to a road and hopefully to somebody else. She continued to hear those low audible grunts and a low man's voice from behind her. And those same footsteps. She heard twigs snapping and like noises of somebody following through the brush and moving trees and such out of the way while they were moving through.
Yeah.
She never saw anybody when she turned back again. She never saw that man again, but she was sure that it was the same person following her. I'm surprised that she didn't have a heart attack at this point, because I sure as shit would have.
Yeah, that is super creepy. Like, no. Grunting in the woods is scary anyway, because it could be a bear, but when you know it's a human, that's like even worse. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I can deal with a bear possibly, sniffing around for food on the perimeter of my campsite and just waiting for him to move on. But this person's clearly not moving on
monsters.
And has followed her for miles. So,
yeah.
Dislike. So, she didn't want to turn back at this point, back to the main trail, because she thought that she would run into whoever or whatever was following her. And the path continued for several days. She heard footsteps nightly around the perimeter of her campsite whenever she had to stop. She heard somebody following her, or who she thought after a few days could be multiple people.
Oh my goodness.
She ran down this ravine and still never found the road. By this point, it was May 11th, 7 days into her hike, and it was when Eloise was supposed to meet her friend on a different part of the trail. Her friend waited for several hours, but Eloise never showed up. Obviously, this was the time before cell phones, so it's not very well like she could check in with her friend that way. Right. But she knew that it was not like Eloise to be late or to not show up, so she went back to civilization herself and reported Eloise Lindsay is a missing person.
What year was this again?
1989.
Okay.
The police launched a massive search for Eloise for approximately 14 days. It was so intense. There was helicopters, there was, they pulled out all the stuff. So there were search dogs, there was everything. For 14 days, they scoured the Appalachian trails and surrounding areas where they believed her to be hiking and found nothing. They didn't find a single trace of her. On Monday, 2 days after the authorities had called off this 2-week search, so she's now been out there for approximately 23 days.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Eloise was found by a deer hunter a few miles north of the 43-mile Foothills Trail in Table Rock State Park, where she started. Initially, she was unbelievably afraid of the hunter, thinking that this is the person that had been hunting her this whole time in the woods. Eventually, she lowered her guard and realized that he was trying to help, and she went with him. She was extremely emaciated. When he found her, she was just slumped up against a tree, almost dazed and lifeless. She was dehydrated, emaciated, and extremely afraid. When she told her story to authorities, she admitted that whoever was following her had gotten so close that one day, walking through the woods, that she ditched her backpack with all of her life-saving supplies so that she could run faster to get away.
Ugh.
So how afraid and how real of a threat do you have to feel for an experienced hiker to ditch everything that could possibly save her in the woods just to get away? She tried to find her way back to her backpack when she was confident that whoever it was that was following her was a distance away, but she was not able to find it amongst the woods. So she hid for a few days, and that was when the deer hunter happened to find her. Since then, Eloise Lindsay has changed her name and she no longer talks to the public about her experience. She is known as the hiker that believed that she was gonna die, and she was called kooky and crazy and made fun of for several years. She is confident that somebody was following her in the woods that day, and locals believe that she was likely telling the truth. People that live in the area of the Appalachian Trail have reported on several instances seeing bushmen in the area, groups of men that live off the land and completely naturally. On some occasions, they've been known to attack locals in times of desperation, but for the most part remain in the distance. It is possible that whoever was hunting Eloise that day in the woods was a bush person or somebody that was either looking for companionship, a woman, because most of them are men, which is like, ew, really gross, or was looking for food or supplies. Either way, the locals believe that Eloise was telling the truth, and the 23 days that she was out in the woods can only point to one thing. This experienced hiker was scared and does not like to engage in hiking to this day. Which is really sad. And nobody knows where she is now, because this was 1989. She was 22, and she changed her name after several interviews. So some of these interviews can be found on the LA Times, on ABC News, etc. I can't find a picture of her for my life. I just say that because we try and include photos wherever we can, and I actually couldn't include a photo of her because I couldn't find a photo that I believed on multiple sources was her. There was a couple of photos that looked like it could have been her, but they were different.
She probably doesn't want people to see photos of her if she changed her name.
Yeah, and it makes me really sad that she was called, like, kooky and crazy, and, like, she was accused of just being, like, out of it because she was in the woods for so long. But she had enough supplies with her that she was able to maintain food and water. She was just so scared. It was only those 3 days that she didn't have food and water.
Yeah.
She lived off of a little bit of creek water near where she was found and where she was hiding in, like, the... You know when, like, trees kind of, like, split down the middle almost at the base of them, and they create, like, those little hollow areas? She was, like, laying in one of those.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So that is the story of Eloise Lindsay. She was stalked in the woods by somebody and was luckily found unharmed. But
yeah, I definitely believe it. I mean, there's literally a whole podcast called Park Predators. Like, people prey in parks. Like,
yes,
there's no doubt someone... It's not just her being crazy. If you hear something, there's probably something there. Also, there's that intuition, gut feeling. Like, she knew someone was there, and luckily
and she
got
knew
away.
what she was doing, and she felt scared enough to ditch her her backpacker's tent and her food and all of her water that was in her backpack so that she could run faster.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. I feel
so
really
creepy.
bad, and I believe her too. So interestingly, how I came across this case is there's a series of books called 411 Disappearances, and it's a retired sergeant. I forget which police jurisdiction he used to work for, but there's a bunch of cases like this where people were followed or tracked in the woods, and most people don't believe them, but he's kind of compiled all of these stories, including Eloise's, into a series of books. So I would highly encourage you guys check those out. They're just short stories, kind of like Eloise's. Hers was one of the longer ones that I was able to find. But they're really cool and really spooky, and I'm sure all of our twisted humans would love them. So they're called Missing 411 Disappearances, and there's 5 books. Go check that out. So that brings us to story number 2, which I found on a rabbit hole excursion of mine through the interweb after coming across Eloise's story and these Missing 411 short stories. There's Reddit threads about it that go on forever of people that have submitted their stories that maybe didn't get selected or are in the works of being put into another one of these books, but they are totally corroborated in the sense that they were reported. However, like Eloise's case, there's no charges because we don't know who or what was following her. So keep that in mind. But this one, they get a little bit closer, and a little bit less comfortable. And the reason why this case caught my eye is because Sierra's name was in it. Not about Sierra at all, but it just caught my eye because I saw the name Sierra. So this story is about Katie. She has omitted her last name. She was 13 years old in the summer of 2013, and she had a very unsettling experience with either a possible bush person or somebody with more sinister intentions. So, in the summer of 2013, Katie was camping with her father, Todd, in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Katie loved camping with her dad. He was a very experienced and established outdoorsman, and she enjoyed learning what she could from him. And when I say camping, like, they were like hardcore campers, like would sometimes sleep in sleeping bags out in like the night,
primitive
campers.
Yeah.
On this particular excursion, they had brought their backpackers tents with them because it was a little bit colder than normal summers. So they brought these just to be safe, but they were planning on not using them if they didn't have to. So they pulled into one of their favorite campgrounds at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And the parking area for the park was packed that day in particular. Her father thought it was strange since it wasn't a long weekend and it wasn't any special week in particular. It wasn't even a particularly warm summer week, like I said. So he didn't think that they were going to have any issues getting a spot. However, they did, and they actually only had one spot left. So these campsites are not your typical campsite. They're for established campers, and they're literally like these little wooden platforms that you lay on and like a little pit for your fire. Like, it's nothing fancy, and it's literally in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. Some of these campsites, especially in the Sierra mountain range, have campsites that have like one bathroom amongst like 50 of these platforms, but they stretch over several kilometers, so it's not very close. But they usually have one bathroom, and it's like a glorified outhouse. They're referred to as bathhouses. They're usually where you can like give your materials a rinse to before you continue on your way. So like I said, only had one spot left. This happened to be the furthest spot away from everything in the campground. So like I said, this bathhouse from the check-in area, etc., it was the furthest place and actually more isolated than Katie or her dad were used to camping in, at least together. So her dad regretted not booking ahead of time, but he was thankful that he was able to get a spot at all. They had planned this little father-daughter weekend, and he didn't want it to be spoiled on account of they couldn't get a spot. So they drove over to their little camp area, unloaded the car, and then her father went back to the beginning of the park where the parking lot was, and parked their vehicle before walking back towards the campsite. While her father was off parking the car, Katie started unloading some of their coolers and belongings and kind of started to get everything set up. So like I said, the campsite was very basic. There's actually had a little picnic table next to the fire pit, and then the base where they could set up either a small tent or sleeping bags. They also had that little pulley system into one of the trees where you could pull your food and coolers up so that bears and stuff wouldn't get to it. Right. So she started unloading their stuff. Like I said, she pulled out what they would need for dinner and then pulled the rest of the coolers up onto the little pulley thing and tied it for the night. They ate their dinner, unloaded, got the campsite out the way that they liked it, and then they started to turn in for the night. And they left a little fire crackling. The next morning, they ate breakfast, set out on a hike for pretty much the entire day throughout the mountains. They had planned about a 13-hour hike for that day before they would come back and go to sleep and start the same process over again. They enjoyed a very nice hike together, nothing out of the ordinary. The weather started to warm up a little bit, so the next day they decided to do the same. There was a trail that they had reached the day prior that they were hoping to explore, but it would take a little bit more time and a little bit more supplies, so they stocked up the next day before going on again. And every time they left, they would just leave their campsite as is, their stuff tied up, and they would go on their way. So this is about 2 days in, after 2 full days of hiking, and they'd come back from their hike that evening / early ass morning. It was about 12 a.m. by the time that they had got back from this particular hike. So they ate quickly before turning in for the evening. Around 3 a.m., so approximately 3 hours later, Katie woke up to hear footsteps coming towards their campsite, which she chalked up to her dad coming back from the washrooms. She admitted that her dad suffered from diabetes and would frequent the washroom throughout the night. But then she started to realize that the footsteps were coming from the wrong direction. The bathhouse was in that direction coming towards her, and this was in the opposite direction coming towards their campsite.
Did they have
out of the range of the campgrounds to begin with? So like literally out of the bushes.
Were her and her dad in 2 different tents?
Yes.
I feel like I've heard this story before.
It's so
Continue,
gross.
though.
Maybe. So thank you for asking that question, Sarah, because I didn't, I think I skipped a paragraph. So their little backpacker tents that they had barely fit one person. They had ventilation slots at both ends of the tents, but you would have to sleep in a ball for like a standard size adult to be all the way in the tent. If you outstretched your legs, your feet are hanging out the bottom of the tent. So I've only Stanley doesn't like the story either
right now.
So only experienced campers would know that. I've only stayed in them at one point, and you can usually get like all season ones that will actually like insulate you quite well too.
So it's basically like a sleeping bag, except it has like this little bubble over top of you. Yeah, so you can breathe.
Yeah, it's not as secure as I would like camping in the woods. So, yeah, these little backpacker tents. So her dad and her are on either side, and then they got this little table and fire pit, and then their coolers are strung up in the trees. So they are like at the back end of the campsite towards fuck all land, like, and they're now she hears these footsteps coming out of the woods, basically not in any direction of any other campgrounds. So obviously she was extremely freaked out by this, now realizing that it wasn't her dad. So she sat, held her breath, not knowing what to do, and nothing good ever happens at 3 a.m. is what I wrote in my notes.
Yeah, definitely not the witching hour. Do you hear Stanley right now?
Yeah,
he's just in here like like he wants to bark so bad, but he's holding it. Like there's nothing to bark at right now. Maybe
Stanley,
he's dreaming
you're
or
so
something.
silly. You're so silly. Maybe he is dreaming. I love it when dogs have dreams. It's hilarious. Or maybe Stanley just doesn't like where the story is going. So something in her body was telling her to lay still, be quiet, and pretend to keep sleeping. So the steps got closer to her tent, circled her tent a few times, and like Sierra has described, it's a glorified sleeping bag. There's not really a tent. And because the little ventilation slots are so low, all she could see were the footsteps going around her tent. It was so dark. It's not very well like there was like a silhouette of a person or anything. She could just see these feet going around of her. So, and hear it too. Whoever it was circled the tent a few times before stopping. She saw a shadow in the moonlight of somebody leaning over her tent. They circled the tent a few more times and then stopped. She anticipated that they had stopped at the bottom of the tent where this little ventilation slot is and where her feet were sticking out the bottom because she was stretched out right. The person stopped, crouched down, and grabbed her foot.
Oh my God, no.
She laid still, continuing to pretend to sleep, and prayed that whoever it was would go away. In my notes, I wrote, "No, thank you."
Like, how do you pretend? I feel like even if you were sleeping, if someone grabbed your foot in your sleep, you would like kick or something.
Yeah,
right? Like, was she playing dead? Like, I don't get it.
I don't know.
Still
but
right
again,
now?
she's 13, so something in her body was similar to Eloise's story. Your body has fear receptors that we need to listen to. So something in her was telling her to just keep laying still. She stifled her scream, and thankfully whoever it was let go and walked away from her tent. She heard them in the campsite for a little while longer before eventually walking off. The next morning, after little to no sleep, Katie crawled out of her tent to find her father sitting at the picnic table, looking like he hadn't slept well as very freaked out. He asked her if she had gotten up to use the washroom around 2 or 3 a.m. last night. She said no, and had told her dad her experience and what had happened and about the person that grabbed her foot. Initially, she thought it was her dad too and told him such, and then realized that it was coming from a different direction. He said he had the same thought, thinking that she was coming back from the bathrooms, but that it was a different direction, and that he had also listened to whoever was walking around in the campsite praying that they would go away. But he had no idea that they had touched his daughter. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to blame the father at all. I'm not, victim blaming. I'm not parent shaming. But if I heard those noises, even if I did think it was my kid, I would be up.
I agree.
Like maybe it's because I'm a paranoid person and because I listen to true crime, but I would be like, who's there? Are you okay?
Yeah.
You good?
The fuck? Yeah. Get out or make some sort. Yeah. Like, try and scare them. Who knows? Who knows what would have been going through his head other than the same thought? Like, is that my kid? No shit, that's not my kid. There's somebody at our campsite. Like, oh my God. Yeah. So she was also really freaked out while she was telling her dad this, and she felt him kind of sink. He said that he felt really helpless, that nothing like this has ever happened on their father-daughter camping trips, and that he felt like he was kind of paralyzed himself and like wasn't able to protect her. So they went to go pack up their things and get the fuck out of there. They moved away from the picnic table towards where their food had been strung up, only to realize that all of the contents of both coolers were nowhere to be found. The coolers were empty when they lowered them. So then they were like, maybe it was a bear that was walking around our campsite, but one, bears don't have opposable thumbs to grab your feet, and two, they would make a mess and they wouldn't still have the coolers strung up. Like, they would be on the ground if bears had gotten to them. So they started walking around looking for the contents of the cooler, and everything had been laid out neatly and displayed in a pyramid shape. All of their food, all of their tools, all of their everything was just displayed in this little pyramid. Nothing was missing. Weird. After confirming that nothing had been taken and that everything had just been pulled out, they were both thinking, what the fuck? And Katie's father, even more freaked out now, urged her to pack up her belongings quickly. To this day, they don't like to talk about this experience, and they now only camp in very public, very civilized areas together.
That is so strange.
Yeah. So that is my 2 shallow dives. Nothing is labeled a crime necessarily, but to me it's a crime. It's a crime of my personal space was violated in both instances.
Yes, for sure. That is a crime in itself.
Yeah, and just a friendly reminder, if you are going to camp in the woods and spend time in the woods, to maybe have somebody with you. I mean, in Katie's case, and she left her and her dad's last names out of the mix, so I can't tell you what their last name is, but she was with her dad, which arguably when you're a child is the safest person for you to be with, and that still happened. So I don't know, I have no faith for the woods right now, and you will only find me in very public campgrounds too.
Yeah. So
yeah, guys, be safe, camp safe, hike safe, and maybe carry a She's Birdie personal alarm with you if you're going to hike in the woods now.
Yeah. And always have a buddy.
And now it's like a little bit better with cell phones and stuff, but like 2013, or maybe her dad would have had a cell phone, and that didn't, like, it's just, ugh, I don't like it.
Don't like.
So yeah, that's my murderless crime shallow dive for you.
And this is my dog who won't stop growling.
He's also unsettled by my story. So
very unsettled, apparently.
Stanley is so into the story. And I will leave you with a quick anecdote about my own experience for the bush person. Mind you, this person was not harmful, I don't think, but definitely creepy. So in Washington, my family and I have occasionally camped at not Pacific Beach. Yes, Pacific Beach. And it is like 3 hours away from here driving, like middle of nowhere on the beach, Washington. You have to drive through this creepy little town in order to get to this campsite. And then once you get there, there's one store and one gas station. Mm-hmm. There's a few a few cabins that are a little bit run down, and then campsites that are right on the beach. So my family, we set up, we had a good time there. And we decided one night after many drinks that we were going to go to this little corner store outside the campgrounds and go for a little walk and get some candies and some treats and stuff. And maybe stock up on any last minute alcohol or whatever that anybody needs that you can get at these stores. So
right.
My family has gone there every year. And one year when they went, they had this beach celebration for Canada Day, or the 4th of July. Sorry, that's what you guys have that's close to Canada Day. So people were out celebrating. There was like a live band on the beach. Everybody was having fun. And there was all of these weird guys that were like dirty and whatever, and like missing teeth and like only wearing partial clothes and like just strangeness. So
right.
My mom, being the friendliest person in the world and a magnet for strange people, these guys come over to her and they're like trying to dance with her. And so he's like trying to talk to my mom, and she's like trying to understand what he's saying, and he doesn't speak the greatest or the clearest English, but what she gathered was that his name was Boo Boo. And so he just kept wanting to dance with my mom and whatever. And so when we're camping there this year, while we're walking to the store, my mom is telling us about this experience and about her friend Boo Boo that she made.
Oh my gosh.
I shit you not. We get to this corner store, and there is Boo Boo and a couple of his friends.
Oh my gosh. That's so great. That's great.
And he like ran off into the woods with his like 6-pack of beer that he had paid for in change and his newspaper. You know, shout out to Boo Boo.
Oh my gosh.
From Boo Boo from Washington.
Yes. Hi, Boo Boo from Washington.
Yeah. Guys, we will see you next week for another episode. Sierra's got a case for us. You will have to stay tuned and find out what that category is for episode 22. Just a reminder, if you like the show, to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. It is the best way you can spread the word. You can tell your friends about us, share the podcast with people you like that are also twisted and spooky humans. And if you want to go further, you can go to our Patreon page. There's lots of bonus content, monthly urban legends, bitch and wine, series recaps, all sorts of fun. We've also got a merch store if you want to support the show that way and have like a physical token item.
So, happy June 22nd, everyone. And don't forget to celebrate that on this day in 1932, Congress passed the Lindbergh Act, making kidnapping a federal crime.
Oh, shit. I love it. What a good day to celebrate not getting kidnapped in the woods.
There you go.
So thanks for sharing, Sierra. And yeah, don't get kidnapped, guys. And until then,
keep it twisted.